Hello, everybody. This is Corsair Mack, president of the Illinois Mental Health Counselors Association. And today I am joined by our very own special guest, Joyce Marter. How are you doing today?
I'm good, Corsair. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, no problem. It's an honor to be interviewing you. So, for those of you that don't know, Joyce Marter is a bit of a celebrity in the counseling field, right? So, usually, if you ask who's a person in the counseling profession that made it, one of the very few names that would come up would be Joyce Marter, because she has experienced success, and hopefully we can get her to share some of those success, those tips and tricks and all that fun stuff in this interview. All right, so knock on everything, fingers crossed. But let's go ahead and get into it because all your fans want to know, how did you become interested in counseling?
Thank you for the kind introduction, Corsair. I became interested in counseling when I was an undergrad at Ohio State University. I started college as an undecided major, and they had a really cool program where they encouraged students who weren't sure what they wanted to be when they grew up to pick three areas of interest and to interview people who worked in the field, to take courses in those areas, and also to study what they loved learning about. And I loved learning about psychology. I've always been interested in sort of our deeper spirituality as human beings and our connections to one another and the world around us. And I found everything that I was learning in my introduction courses to psychology extremely fascinating and interesting. And I learned quickly after interviewing some people that I would need to go on and get a master's degree if I didn't want to be a waitress like I had been for many years forever. So I learned that I needed to get some experience doing some research and really making myself a good candidate for graduate school applications.
All right, perfect. So then speaking of that, so I know you mentioned this a little bit before already, but what schools did you go to for your undergraduate and your graduate degrees?
Yeah, so I loved Ohio State. It was fantastic. It's an enormous school. At the time that I was there in the early 90s, there were 56,000 students and a lot of neighboring colleges around as well, and people internationally attending the university. So very diverse. And I just loved my learning experience there. I minored in Spanish as well. And I applied to several different graduate schools. And my older sister, Teresa, lived in the Chicago area, and she encouraged me to apply at Northwestern. And I told Teresa that there was no way I was going to get in there. I certainly didn't feel I was smart enough and thought she was being silly. And because she's very bossy, I applied. And in a strange twist of fate, Northwestern University was the only graduate program that was accepted to. So take that, University of Akron. I had applied actually to mostly doctoral programs, and I was coming straight from undergrad. So now I understand, why I wasn't admitted to some of those other programs. But the universe was taking good care of me because I attended the Master's in Counseling program at Northwestern University at the Family Institute, and I loved it. I feel like I had such wonderful, rich training there. That program, now it's online and in person, and they offer internships or practicums each year of study, whether you do the 2-year program or you take it 3 years part-time. So you get a lot of rich clinical experience. And I really felt like I found my people, people who care about social justice, about advocating for others, about, helping and really recognizing the importance of mental health in each and every one of us.
All right, perfect. Very nice. So you're here to hear, folks. Apply to Northwestern, you'll get in. Right? Knock on everything, fingers crossed.
I love it.
Mhm. See, you should be their spokesperson. I'm telling you, that might be your next calling.
I do have a really fond place in my heart. I've hired a lot of alum over the years, and I've served as a clinical supervisor there for about 15 years and an adjunct faculty member for a few. But I have moved on from those roles on to doing more speaking and book writing and things like that.
All right, perfect. So I'm going to ask you a little bit about that in a little bit. But you've mentioned that, you were there, you did your thing, and then you got out and you went out to the real world and did everything that you could do and more. So before we get into all that fun stuff, how long have you been doing therapy for?
My goodness, it has been now 25 years that I've been a licensed clinical professional counselor, so a long time. And I found the work to be emotionally, spiritually, relationally, and financially rewarding. I remember when I first started graduate school, it really scared me that the professor said on the first day of class, "Well, you certainly didn't go into this field for the money." And I thought, uh-oh, I just signed 50,000 of student loans. How am I going to pay them back and support myself? So I've become really passionate about advocating for counselors financially and helping us all look at our financial mindset as we work in this field.
Mhm. Yeah, definitely. So when we take a look at a few things, I know you mentioned that, when you're out here, you've grown a lot helping out other people. So let's take a look at that for a second. So, what places did you start off working your profession, and what did you learn as a result from working at those places?
My gosh, my first job out of Northwestern's graduate program was at the Family Guidance Center, which is a methadone maintenance program in downtown Chicago. I wanted to have job experience in substance use disorders because at the time in my program, that wasn't really an area of course concentration. There was no course on substance use disorders or addiction. And I knew that that was something that I needed to learn about if I somewhat someday wanted to be in private practice. Something I feel really passionately about is that many mental health professionals don't really have substance use disorders on their radar. The research shows that almost 50% of people who are dealing with a dual diagnosis of both mental health and a substance use disorder don't receive any treatment at all. And 40% only receive mental health treatment. And their mental health providers are not recognizing the substance use disorder. So I loved my work at the methadone maintenance clinic. I made a lot of good friends. It was my first job, so I learned some professional skills. And I was actually within 6 months promoted to a program supervisor. So I worked with HIV positive IV drug users, and I managed a staff of several counselors and worked on a needle exchange program. And that whole experience just opened my eyes really to trauma and to some really important issues with systemic racism, with poverty, with our criminal system, because many of my clients were in and out of the justice system. And I just feel like my eyes were opened. And I learned a tremendous amount. It was a very humbling experience. And from there, I went on to work for an employee assistance program. I was interested in earning more money, and I'd heard that at EAPs, it's more of like a business type setting, and that the salaries were a bit higher, but you needed that substance use experience. And so I worked for Employee Resource Systems, which is here in Chicago. They're a national EAP company. And EAPs provide short-term counseling to the employees of their client companies and their family members. So I did a lot of work over the phone, some short in-person counseling, and then I was promoted to an account manager where I would go to the client companies and I would give workplace wellness seminars and corporate trainings. And that really got me interested in doing more public speaking, which I do a tremendous amount of today. I also started working for a private practice, a group private practice, as a side hustle, a couple of evenings a week and on Saturday mornings. And that particular group practice required us to find our own clients. So it was kind of a sink or swim experience.
Yeah.
And it taught me how to market to get referrals. And I found a great mentor in that job experience that was my clinical consultant for many, many years. And I think it's so important for each of us to have mentors. So each of those job experiences really equipped me to be in sole proprietorship in private practice, and then later on to found Urban Balance.
Mhm. Right. So I swear, folks, we did not plan that, but this perfectly segues into the next question, right? Because you mentioned how you were gaining all this experience, and then you just decided, you know what? It's time for me to do my own thing. And then, boom, start your own private practice. So, first, what led you to start your own private practice?
Well, I had that job experience as my side hustle, working for a group practice, and I really enjoyed the work. And even back in graduate school, I had an idea that someday I hope to be in private practice because I really hoped to become a mother. And I felt like private practice would allow me a flexible schedule. But I also love my work. I'm very, very passionate about it. I find this work just so rewarding. And I needed to also pay my mortgage and my bills. So I uh, continued with private practice. And while I was at the EAP, I noticed that at the time in the mid 90s, late 90s, that a lot of therapists in private practice either charged full fee self pay, or they only took Blue Cross Blue Shield because they reimbursed the best at the time. And they didn't accept many other insurances like United Healthcare or Magellan or Aetna or Cigna. And I really believe we all need therapy and counseling at different points in our lives. I know I've found it transformative ever since my initial professors at Northwestern recommended it as a student in training. It has been life changing for me to be in and out of counseling at different points in my life. And I think it should be accessible and affordable for everyone. So I came up with the idea of having an insurance friendly group practice where we're in network with every panel that we can be on,
Oh,
and making therapy accessible and affordable to more people. And it turned out that there was a real need for that. So the way that I transitioned was I built up my private practice to the point where I had about 15 clients per week. And then I asked my full-time job if I could step down to 4 days a week. And they said, no problem. And I built up my practice a little bit more and then went down to 3 days a week. And then I became pregnant. And when I came back from maternity leave, I let go of the EAP job and went into full-time private practice, which is really considered to be seeing 20 or more clients a week. So I saw about 20, 25 clients for my daughter Celeste's first couple of years of life. And around that time, decided to start Urban Balance, which was, hiring one therapist at a time to use my office when I wasn't there. And I gave them the referrals that I was no longer accepting because I had an overflow of referrals because of being insurance friendly.
all right. Wow, that was lucky. You found a job that'll let you step down one day
Yes.
a week. So, yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, I'm very grateful to them. They were a great employer to work for. And I did do some creative negotiation. Like I told them that, I was married, had a partner. So I didn't need the health insurance. So I let go of that. I said that I would keep the same workload for 4 days a week. So why not? It was actually costing them less, but it was giving me the flexibility that I needed. And it didn't impact me really at all. So that's something I really support counselors in doing, and is being creative and negotiating and advocating for yourself to cultivate, financial success and also work-life balance.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Work-life balance is important, but financial success is very important. So I agree with that. So then going back to your private practice name, Urban Balance. So this is a fun question I always like to ask people that have their own practice. And hopefully your story is a lot cooler than mine. But why did you choose the name Urban Balance?
So my older sister, Teresa, who I mentioned was inspiring, getting me to apply to Northwestern, had worked for many years as a creative director and graphic designer, and she specializes in branding. So Teresa said to come up with a lot of words that I liked, and we'd start to play around with them to come up with some names and then try them out on people. And so I came back to her and I said, well, I really like the word urban and I really like the word balance. And she said, well, why not urban balance? And so she credits herself with having come up with the name urban balance. I thought it needed something else like counseling or something else in the name, but it turned out, I think for clients, it's a little bit more anonymous. If they get a voicemail or if someone sees they have an appointment at Urban Balance, it could be anything. It could be a chiropractor or a massage therapy place. And so I liked that appeal. And then part of my mission was to cultivate work-life balance for myself as an owner. I wanted to work only school hours when my daughters were in school, and that came to fruition. I was very boundaried around that. And I also wanted work-life balance for my staff, and ended up, this was kind of by accident. I realized that because I was looking for part-time therapists to work in a group practice setting, there was a real job market need for that at the time, because therapists were either working in agencies or hospitals or in treatment facilities where they were getting enormously burnt out, or they were having to start their own private practice. And what I found was that there's a lot of parents who are counselors who are interested in working, 15 to 30 hours per week, but not having the risk of hanging their own shingles. So we ended up hiring a lot of working parents who wanted a flexible part-time job, or maybe they weren't a parent, but they taught a course at a university, or they had some other side job that was part-time. So pairing those two jobs worked really well. And I always think for a business to be successful, it has to be a win for the owner, for the staff, and for the clients. And so, but being insurance friendly made therapy a lot more affordable. Instead of being $100 or more out of pocket, which most of us can't afford, then it was a $15 to $40 copay per session. And so we had a huge overflow of referrals, and clients were able to stay in treatment longer because they could afford to do so. And then they were getting better and sharing that positive feedback with others, which led to more referrals and more growth for the company.
All right. Wow. Why didn't I think of that? Right. But no, that's great. That's really great. So speaking of that, I mean, true, I have a lot more questions than the ones I have currently, but we'll skip those for now because something interesting happened, right? You had a lot of success. And when I say a lot of success, I mean a lot of success. But then you made the decision to just sell your company. So what led you to sell your practice?
Well, I'm laughing a bit, Corsair, because you've a couple times in this interview said luck and things like that. In terms of my practice, I worked so hard and for so many years, to grow this business, and I made 1,000 mistakes. And, I founded Urban Balance in 2004. And in 2011, I lost my business partner who I had co-founded Urban Balance with. She left the business because we were in cash flow hell. The bigger we got, the more money was outstanding in insurance payments. And that was okay when it was $5,000 or $10,000. We could manage that. But when it became hundreds of thousands of dollars, I was having difficulty paying our staff on time and paying our rent on time. I had insomnia and panic attacks. It was horrible. And my former business partner left. She actually was one of my closest, dearest friends. I would have never imagined that this would have happened, but it was that stressful that she just sent an email and said, I'm out. I can't deal with this anymore. And actually never came back to the office.
Wow.
So half of our staff left, taking their clients. And it was that experience that really broke me open and taught me a lot of humility. And instead of kind of wearing the mask of ego and telling everyone like, oh, it's fine, I've got it, no problem, I shared pretty vulnerably with my staff and my friends and family and said, I have made some serious errors by not seeking proper business and financial consultation because I was afraid. I was afraid if I sought that type of consultation that someone would say, your business model doesn't work and your dream won't come to fruition. So I stuck my head in the sand and I was in financial denial. But once I asked for help, help came out of the woodwork. And my staff and the team at Urban Balance really helped me turn the ship around. And also, I had a neighbor who said, Joyce, you need a business valuation. And I didn't know what that was. So he recommended I talk to his CPA. And I met with Tim. I handed him my QuickBooks file. I was actually crying because I thought he was going to tell me I had to file bankruptcy. And he asked me what my exit plan was. And I was like, what are you talking about? And he was like, whenever you build a business, you need to think about the end goal and how you want to get out of the business. And so he did a business valuation and he came back to me and he said, Joyce, your business is actually worth a 7-figure multiple, even though I was hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt. And I didn't understand that, but he said, your business model truly works. You truly have a cash flow problem and I can help you. And so he helped me get proper lending. I worked with my leadership team. And at that point, I was really burnt out as a clinician, as a mom, as a business owner. And I thought, oh my gosh, I have 5 years to put into this. That's all the energy that I have for this because it was a lot of responsibility. I had huge leases, tons of employees. And so I decided that I would develop an exit strategy to sell Urban Balance and that I would spend the next 5 years really strengthening the business to grow and scale it to multiple locations and grow it as big and strong as possible and then put it on the market to sell. And so I did that with the intention of freeing up my biggest asset, which was the business, and cashing in on that and taking my risk off the table. And then freeing myself to write books and public speak, which really was my dream. So that with a lot of planning and strategy has come to fruition, thankfully.
All right, definitely. Thank you for sharing that. I had no idea.
Yes. You'll have to read my book, Coursera, and listen to the audiobook because I share my whole story in there. And the tools that I use to recover, we learn in our clinical training, mindfulness, CBT, the importance of accessing support, narrative therapy, all of those things are the tools that I use to change my financial mindset and save my business and really transform my life.
All right, definitely. So before we talk about your book, there's something really interesting that I found about you that you're actually a mindset fixing coach. So I guess my question is, what is a mindset fixing coach and how do you help clients in that regard?
So I started coaching maybe about 15 years ago, and my coaching services started out because I had so many private practice owners asking me for advice. And I realized that I could have several lunches per week, or I could start charging for that. So I decided to set some financial boundaries around that and offer coaching. And I realized I really enjoy it. It's a little bit lighter of a load emotionally than doing counseling. And I just love supporting other clinicians in their entrepreneurial efforts. And so I've been doing this for a number of years. I really enjoy it, very much have the abundant mindset that the more of us out there doing good work in the world, the better. So I used to have people say, why are you coaching other people to be your competitor? But I don't view it that way because people would, we'd establish a relationship and then they would send me clients, maybe, to Urban Balance of clients that had insurance that they didn't take, or they'd send me a speaking engagement or something like that. So now I also offer coaching for helping people fix their financial mindset. So their psychology of money and the mindset fix trademark is something that I have established in the last year, really to trademark my way of doing counseling, doing therapy, doing coaching. And it's also trademarked as a book series because I hope to write more books with the mindset fix title. So I always look at heroes like Brene Brown and others, and I noticed that she had her trademark and on some of her materials. So I've sort of emulated that with mindset fix, if you will.
Okay. All right. So then, speaking of that, so your book, The Financial Mindset Fix, which you wrote, I know that everybody has their own different way of writing books. So before we get into the book itself, what was your book writing process and what led you to write The Financial Mindset Fix?
My goodness, it is kind of a long, twisty, turny road that I went through. But I had been quoted in the Wall Street Journal in 2010, I believe. They had reached out to me. I was shocked. I was on vacation, and my intake coordinator called me and said, "The Wall Street Journal wants to talk to you. Do you want to talk to them?" And I said, "Of course." And they had found a blog that I'd written about pre-baby couples counseling, which is something that I started at Urban Balance because I saw that a lot of couples really struggle with the transition to parenting. And so the article ended up being the most read cover story of the Wall Street Journal that week. And I was quoted with Dr. John Gottman, the marital research expert, which was kind of wild. And my friends at ICA and IMHCA and Northwestern were like, "What? You and John Gottman in the same article?" They couldn't believe it. But anyway, I had a publisher reach out and asked if I'd be interested in writing a book. And I learned pretty quickly that in the industry, it's best if you have an agent, a literary agent. And I had a friend who had recently published a successful book, and she introduced me to her agent. It's typically really hard to get an agent, but because I had an interested publisher and I had a lot of media, I was blogging for the Huffington Post and Psych Central and had a lot of TV and radio interviews. I had some interest and got the literary agent. However, my book went through a lot of rejection, and that actual publisher rejected that book. And fast forward 10 years later, when I sold Urban Balance, I circled back with my literary agent, actually got a book deal for that, call it the baby book. And then I happened to say to her, "I can't wait to publish this book so I can write the one I really want to write, which is The Psychology of Success," at the time is what I was calling it. And she said, "Well, what's that?" And she said, "That's the book you need to write. I'd like you to say no to your previous book offer. You can shelf that book for now, and we're going to publish this one." So The Psychology of Success became the Financial Mindset Fix, a mental fitness program for an abundant life. I loved the process of writing the book. It felt really creative and fun, making exercises. Each chapter starts with a story of my own life experience, personally and professionally, and how each of the 12 chapters is a mindset that I've identified leads to holistic success. And then I explain the therapy roots of it. And then I have fun exercises like journaling prompts and CBT exercises and these innovative wheel exercises for people to expand these skills. And I worked with a PhD researcher who found that these 12 mindsets are empirically proven to lead to improved mental health and improved financial success. So super fun. The book has been published in Spain and Latin America. Next month, it's going to be published in China and Taiwanese. Oh, wow. And soon after, it'll be published in Korea. So super, super excited about that. It's been a lot of fun. Also humbling. It's, book sales are humbling for a first-time author, but I'm going to stay this course. I'm going to keep speaking and writing and and trusting in the process.
Oh, wow. You took your book international.
Yes, I think big.
Congratulations.
Thank you, Corsair. I think big. That's
Mhm.
that abundant mindset. That's what I do with my clients. I always mirror back to them their unique gifts and empower them to align them with a need in the world and to have the courage to do that to the greatest extent possible. And when we do that, we shine our light and we lift others up, and there's a financial return. And when I talk about money, I'm not talking about greed or materialism or excess. I'm talking about really being our best self in every way. And when we do that, we can help more, we can be of service more. So as my business went from, cash flow hell to succeeding, I was able to hire more people, have more interns, offer more sliding fee and pro bono counseling, and give to charities and do volunteer work like you're doing in your presidency for IMHCA. So you can be of greater service when you're secure financially.
Oh, yeah, definitely 100%. So speaking of that, well, I guess not really speaking of that, speaking of something else. So, just like what you mentioned a little bit earlier, you've been on TV, you've been interviewed, you do public speaking and all that fun stuff. So as I was doing my research on you, I also saw, before we get into the speaking and things like that, that you have a media and event planning kit. So could you explain a little bit more about what that is?
Yeah, so I do really enjoy media. I think it's fun. I love writing articles and then seeing if they get picked up and around the world. I think that's amazing. And it's another way to help people other than doing direct counseling. It's sharing, knowledge and mental health awareness and tools and techniques. And so I've discovered I really like it. Previously, it was a great way to market Urban Balance. Now it's a great way to market my speaking and my book. And so a media kit is something that a person who's interested in attracting more media should create. And you can send it out to local TV producers or radio hosts, and you can pitch to be a guest on podcasts or, be a contributor for writing articles for other websites and that type of thing. So it typically has, photos and links to examples of media that you've been in. And so that's something that I have on my website in case journalists are interested in learning about more about my experience.
All right, very nice. You heard it here, folks. Get your media kit. It will help you get on TV. And then hopefully you'll get TV famous, right? Knock on
Right.
everything, fingers crossed. All right, so before we get into, some IMCA stuff, because for those that don't know, Joyce Marter is a former IMCA president. I want to talk a little bit more about your public speaking. So, how did you get into public speaking? What was that process?
Well, when I worked for the employee assistance program, I had a boss who made me do it. And I told him, Bill, I have anxiety and I have social anxiety and I am not a public speaker. And he said, oh, I hear you talking, in the lunchroom and to colleagues and to clients. And he said, you're very articulate. You're a good storyteller. I believe you can do this. And so he held my feet to the fire and he made me give presentations to our client companies. And I had a little note cards and my voice would shake as I read my note cards. And he just made me stick with it. And after months of having several speaking engagements a week, I had to get over myself. I had to find my voice. And I realized that if we flub up or we misspeak and we make mistakes or we stumble, we're human and people are generally pretty kind and forgiving, and it's okay. So I realized I really enjoy public speaking. I like spreading mental health awareness. I like making people think. I like inspiring them to live a greater life personally and professionally. And so I started doing more speaking through marketing Urban Balance, whether it was for community events at a chamber of commerce or speaking for other organizations as a marketing effort, or starting to give continuing education trainings. And then through my board work with IMCA, ICA, and ACA, I started presenting more on a state and national, regional, level. And then I was offered to be the keynote for ACA's Leadership and Development Conference, which was one of my biggest keynotes early on. And that kind of gave me the courage to identify myself as a keynote speaker. And so I started putting myself out there, and a lot of state branches heard me speak there and then invited me to be keynote speakers for their conferences. And so that really started that business. I ended up joining the National Speakers Association, and now I speak for global companies across industries, counseling organizations, you name it. And last year I had 60 speaking engagements. So quite a few. So I'd say about a quarter of those are in person, maybe a third, and the rest are virtual. But I've worked at, raising my fees, and it's now a successful business and income stream for me.
All right. You have been busy. And it looks like you are not slowing down anytime soon.
No. I love my work. I'm really passionate about it.
Mhm. Right. Perfect. So speaking of work, taking a look at some of your past success, just like what I mentioned earlier, you were a previous IMCA president. So first things first, because I always ask this every time someone runs for a leadership position, what led you to want to run for the IMCA presidency?
Well, I was kind of a late bloomer when it came to IMCA. I think I was in my late 30s and in the profession for over 15 years. And an IMCA president asked me to host a networking meeting for IMCA at Urban Balance. And I said, no problem. And it was such a lovely event, and I really enjoyed it. And she said, Joyce, you seemed like you really enjoyed this. You should join our board. And there was an open spot for membership chair. And because I enjoy marketing and business development, I was able to take that seat at the table on the board. And I loved learning from other leaders like Norm Dassenbrook and Nadia Johnson and Judy Faywell and others that had been on the IMCA board for many years. And I made a lot of great friends, like Jennifer Fromel and Michelle Karoulis and others. And I found like I received so much professional support and collegiality that I wasn't experiencing in private practice. I was kind of lonely in some ways. And now I had the opportunity to get to know other group practice owners and develop friendships and just access more support and resources. I loved being on the insurance task force at IMCA. I found that really, really valuable. And so I kind of moved up quickly. The next year I was vice president, and the year after that I was president. And then I served a second term as president. And then I moved on to ICA president, and then chair of the Midwest region of the American Counseling Association. So all of that was about 11 years of board leadership work.
Mhm. Well, thank God for you, right? For having the patience, the time, the dedication, the commitment to do all that,
Thank
right?
you.
Because it is a lot of work.
I trust it is a lot of work. And I trust you, Corsair, will be, hopefully someday you'll be ACA president or something like that, if that interests you. I think you're a wonderful leader
Well,
and
who
saw that
knows?
in you early on when we first met.
Mhm. Well, maybe. Knock on everything. Thankfully, IMCA, for those of you that don't know, I know I toot my own horn when I say this, but it isn't just me that does this, though. Our membership reached a record number of over 2,100 members.
It's
So,
amazing.
yes.
That's really a lot.
Mhm.
That's really fantastic. Congratulations on those efforts.
Yeah. So, first I'll say it was all me, and I'll take that back. Like, no, thankfully, it's the board that did it. We've been really busy. But speaking of that, let's really, if you remember, let's really take a look at some of those accomplishments. So, what are some accomplishments that you were proud of, and what are some things that you would wish you would have had more time to work on as IMCA president?
I would say, as IMCA president, the number one thing I'm most proud of was related to the insurance task force. basically at that point, and it may have been before my presidency actually, but I was on the board. Through the insurance task force, we met with Blue Cross Blue Shield of Illinois, and we asked for a fee increase and had gathered data from other states, what the Blues, pay mental health clinicians in other states. And I had data from my practice of what some other insurance companies were paying as compared to Blue Cross Blue Shield. And we worked with some other professional associations like NASW and the Marriage and Family Association. And we got an 18% pay increase for all mental health providers in the state of Illinois for Blue Cross Blue Shield. And that was remarkable. I had been on that panel for many years and never had a raise. In fact, sometimes they even suddenly randomly decided to decrease the reimbursement rate by $1 or $2. And so this was a major win, and just felt great that it was benefiting all counselors and all mental health professionals in Illinois. So that was really important to me. During my ICA presidency, we started a diversity and leadership task force. I know Dr. Benton Johnson was heavily involved in that. And I at that time, I noticed that the board really didn't look like our membership, and there changes needed to be made to be more inclusive. And so I would say that that was one of the biggest successes, and it is reflected by the leaders who've served ever since. And so that makes me very, very happy that that had lasting change.
Very nice. Very nice indeed. So, as we all know, all good things must come to an end because we are down to our final three questions. And I mean, sure, we'll definitely have to do a part two because there's a whole bunch of stuff that we need to talk about more of that marketing, that financial mindset, your time as ACA president and ICA president, and things, a lot of stuff that we couldn't fit into this hour, unfortunately. But as we get down to the final three, so first things first, is there anything that you'd like to tell people that are either starting out in the profession or who have been in the profession for a while?
Absolutely. Well, first, I want to just clarify I was not ACA president. I was
Oh,
chair of the Midwest region, but
shares in
thank
the
you.
region.
I think you'll be president someday.
Oh,
But but my advice to people newer in the field is to really cast a wide net of what your interests are and not worry about identifying a niche early on. I think it's best to just have any and every experience that's open and available to you, because you might be surprised. I know I was surprised about what I ended up really loving about counseling, working with different populations or different techniques that at first didn't seem to interest me, ended up being what I was most interested in. So having an open mind and trying everything early on, I think, is important. And then also having mentors. So I mentioned my mentor that I met at my first group practice job, and also mentors like Norm and Judy and Nadia and Sandy Kakasik and others that I met through ICA and IMHCA. Your mentors are the key to your success. They will shine the light for you. They will save you a lot of time and heartache. They will introduce you to people and share resources. So attend conferences and networking events and get involved in IMCA and make connections, because those connections can help you find a different job if you want it. They can help you start your own business or practice if you're interested in that. They can improve your life. So definitely making those relationships and finding mentors is important.
All right, perfect. All right, so second to last question. So, is there anything that you'd like to say that I haven't had a chance to ask you?
My goodness. Just that I love this field. And one of the things that I love most about it is that we as counselors, I mean, we do such meaningful, important work. And we also have the opportunity to work in so many different settings with so many different populations. We can teach, we can write, we can public speak, we can be clinicians, we can be supervisors. The list is never ending. And so I've had a long career in counseling and I hope to continue that. And so you can grow and expand, you can make changes. If you get burnt out in one area, you can open doors in another. And so I think it's really important. And I do really want all counselors to value themselves in the work that we do and to think about money, whether it's, in your salary or in your practice, or in your personal finances, and to really think about the connection between mental health and financial health, because it's really powerful. And when our financial health suffers, it can really impair our mental health and vice versa.
Definitely. I really like that thing or that one line that you said, when you get burnt out in one place, then you can open a door in another. That is so true. And a lot of people really don't think about that, right?
Mhm.
Because you don't have to do it all, right? You could just focus on one area, and when you're done with that, you can go to another, right? So that's very important.
Yes.
All right. So now we get to the most important question of the day, right? Drum roll a little bit. So where can people contact you if they want more information or if they want to get a hold of you or anything like that?
I would love for people to contact me. My website is joycemarter.com. So JoyceMarter. I'm on all social media. I would love to connect on LinkedIn. I would really appreciate some Instagram love. It's hard to get a following with Instagram, so I'd love to see people there. And my book is available on Amazon. It's on Kindle, it's on Audible and Kindle, and it's in bookstores as well. So again, it's called The Financial Mindset Fix, and I hope people will check that out. I also have a digital course that's available, and it's pretty affordable if people are interested in that. And I'll actually give a coupon code. If you punch in prosperity, you'll get 25% off of my course. So I hope people will check that out. It's on my website.
All right. You heard it here, folks. Punch in prosperity, get that 25% discount, and make some money, right? All right. So, other than that, that'll be it for this interview. Again, thank you, Joyce, for coming on and doing this interview. I really do appreciate it.
My pleasure, and always great talking with you, Corsair.
Other than that, this is Corsair Mac, president of the Illinois Mental Health Counselors Association, signing out, and I'll see you all in the next interview. Take care.